What's going on, pond lovers everywhere? This is the inaugural episode of a new podcast that we're putting together called, get this, the PONDCast. Everyone loves a good pun, and the name wasn't taken, so I took it. Now, this is getting sponsored by Webs Online. That's the number one place for you to go get all of your pond supplies to get ready for the spring. And we've been around for generations, so we actually have all of the best phone numbers in our little call log to answer any question that our customers come up with. So that's going to be the angle of this podcast, is basically your questions getting answered by specialists in their field. And we have a bona fide biochem specialist here. Carolyn Wise is going to be phoning in from Microblift. And seeing as we're going from winter hibernation into spring, we get a lot of questions on basically how the heck does this stuff work? Now, we know as much as anybody else out there. We specialize, we have a giant warehouse full of these things, so we can answer your questions, but this lady can get into the science of it. This lady can actually explain what's happening when their bioworks go into effect and start cleaning up the leaves at the bottom of the pond. Where does that stuff go? How does it work? What's eating the leaves? This is going to be a little bit more of a behind-the-scenes, in-depth investigation on subjects that you guys have told us are important to you. So, before I get started, if you guys ever want us to investigate anything a little bit further in this crazy world of ponds, go ahead and email us at PONDCast, that's PONDCast at websonline.com. Now let's get into our interview and learn a little bit more about what's going on during the spring inside your pond. All right, well, we have on the phone right now, I'm going to go ahead and call you an expert. I hope that's not something you're going to refute. We have Carolyn Wise coming from Florida, from Microblift. And Carolyn, we got a call from a customer, and it was a really, really technical customer, and we wanted to do a follow-up. So they were going to get ready to use their spring and summer cleaner, and they were curious what the actual science was behind that type of application. And we have your number, so we thought we'd bother you and get you on the podcast this week.
Okay, that's a good question. I'm glad you asked, because that is a Microblift product. The Spring Summer Cleaner contains packets that have a strong psychotropic bacteria that goes to work in the warming waters of spring, and it works in summer as well. They also contain cellulase enzymes that work, they're in a bran base. The only thing you're going to see is the bran, because both the enzymes and the bacteria, the microbes, are microscopic, so you can't see them with the naked eye.
Could I take one quick interjection? And what's this the what word there?
Okay, it's called psychotropic.
Psychotropic. Okay, well that definitely would have made me fail my spelling test back in the day. But can you explain that for all of us who just enjoy koi but don't necessarily understand the science of it?
Okay, psychotropic is it's not a true psychrophilic cold water bacteria, since the bacteria do not have an optimal growth at low temperatures, like the psychrophilic do. Psychrophilic will grow at very low temperatures, icy waters. The psychotropic will grow in the warming temperatures. And I've been telling people too that I'm getting a lot of calls about this right about now.
I'm sure you are,
yeah. What temperature to use this product? I tell them when your pond is thawing, because it's a spring product, and you use it when the pond is thawing, because it's going to continue to warm as we go.
Interesting.
Right. I mean, you figure, when the temperature is 45 degrees, it's going up. It's on the upswing. So if the water temperature is 40 or 45 degrees, that's a pretty good temperature to add this. Being spore-based, it's going to continue to work faster as the water warms up. You're going to be using it for 4 weeks, so it'll work faster as the water warms. Psychrophilic will work in the cold water, and a psychrophilic trophic is going to work as it warms up. We have a lot of people who will use it in summer, all through the summer, if they have overhanging trees and the leaves are actually building up in there areas where they can't get them out, like farm ponds.
Oh yeah, I grew up in central Pennsylvania, so I'm very familiar with that kind of an approach. Yeah. I have a good friend of mine who benefits greatly from me being connected with Webb's Water Gardens. So I like getting off on these side tangents, and I'm probably going to ask you a couple more times, just because what you're spelling out is the answer that this customer wanted. But let me get you back on track. So thank you very much for taking a step back and explaining that to us.
I also want to explain that the outer casing is water soluble. People do not have to open those packets to put the product into the water.
Oh, yeah, good point.
And everything in those 8 water soluble packets was made in the USA. It's all natural. There's nothing that they have to worry about. It's not going to harm their fish, their plants, or anything else in the pond.
So once that gets into the pond, that is now part of the biology and the chemical makeup and everything with the water. What is happening to that environment once you introduce that? What is the change? What is the actual science behind that?
Well, the enzymes produced by the bacteria, that psychotrophic bacteria, are not limited to cellulose reduction. They also can do sludge reduction and some odor control. The cellulase enzymes, however, they are going to target the cellulose organics, such as leaves, leaf particles, and dead vegetation that's in the pond. So I was always curious.
Yeah. These things are, in essence, would you say that they're eating this stuff? Is that fair? Is that too layman? No, is that too layman of a term? That's fine.
Well,
that's what we're
very
trying to figure out.
I guess in a way that's very layman, but they don't actually eat it.
I've been accused of being very layman once or twice.
They convert it. Actually, what they do is
okay.
They convert it. It's like the enzymes in your mouth break down the food so that your stomach can digest it. It's actually just breaking it down to a more soluble stage, so that it can, nothing is actually, when you say eaten, then what? Then what after they eat it? That was
going to be my question. What are they doing when they're done with all this change?
That's just a process of ingesting when you say eaten. And once it's eaten, then what? And it's got to be converted into something else. And in the pond, you want it to be converted into something that is less organic. You want it to be actually eliminated from the pond. So
Gotcha.
The longer process is make it into something that can be removed from the pond. So leaves, especially, being slow to degrade, very slow to degrade, they create pockets in there that become gas filled. Sulfur, hydrogen sulfide and methane, and can become killers of inhabitants of the pond. So you do want to address that. You do want to get rid of the leaves in the pond. People with small ponds can usually net them out, but in the spring, with fish in there, still maybe dormant or in torpor in the bottom of the pond, you don't want to scoop your fish out either. So,
well, let's be fair. Most people forget about these ponds until, it's time to remember them, and that's why, treatments like this are so necessary. Not everyone's going to go out there. Not all of us are so diligent as to, even put a net out. That's just the truth of the matter. So these are very valuable things. But
it is very valuable because
I
even
think this,
the particles.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, and I think this really explained it. So if I have it correctly understood, these bacteria actually, they go in, and by eating they actually digest and then expel a different product. So they're going to eat this sludge, they're going to eat this other buildup, and then what they exert on the other side is a neutral, if not non-negative byproduct of that consumption, therefore cleaning your pond of what could be hazardous material.
And the end product should be nitrogen and oxygen that's going to harmlessly escape the pond.
Yeah, all right.
Gases.
So I think what I just did was provided not only a science lesson, but an excellent answer to our customer's question.
Thank you.
Hey, well, thank you. All right, well, can we give you a call if we have anything else going on?
Absolutely.
All right, guys. Well, that is Carolyn Wise from Microblift. And again, thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And that concludes our interview with Carolyn Wise. I hope you guys understand a little bit more about what's going on when you throw those packets into your pond. Obviously, everything's not magic. Someone has to do some research and figure out exactly how things work, and also make sure we're not killing all of our koi. Speaking of koi, we did a quick investigation and found out that there is a really interesting story as to how koi came to America. And Blue Ridge Hatchery and Casey Lefevre have that story because it's actually their family's fault. So we are going to jump into a little bit of a history lesson on how koi got to America and got into our ponds next week on the PONDCast. Now again, if you guys want us to investigate anything further, find some story and some background on something and really flesh out, what's going on in your head when you're sitting there staring at your pond, go ahead and send those questions to PONDCast@websonline.com. And until next time, take care and enjoy your pond.